Since I recently spent 9 days in Texas, I have a better idea what Texas is like in the hot summer. To be clear, I've been to Texas in the summer before. Recently, in the past couple years, it's mainly just been in the airport where I didn't even get out of the airport except for that little gap between like the tram trains and the terminals. It's sort of like this little about 2-inch gap, and I'm thinking, man, it's hot. Even from that I could tell it's hot out there. And I guess when I was in my teens, I went to Houston a few times and actually did spend a week or two out there. So I kind of knew that Houston is very hot, very uncomfortable. You kind of go from air conditioning house to air conditioning car to air conditioning store and repeat the cycle. You just do not stay outside for long periods of time or you'll die. But spending a week out there, or 9 days, allowed me to kind of get an idea, which would be good if I ever consider moving out there. I thought, well, I should keep this in mind. I should never forget this. I should make a video. So let's go over what I learned. Not much, but I learned a little. 9 days, I did not get out of the house much. I actually was mostly in that house fixing it up, but I did get out sometimes, and even just right outside the front door, I learned a lot. Number one, Texas is hot in the summer. This should surprise nobody in America and maybe half of Europe. People just know that. I knew that. It's just a hot state in the summer. And to be clear, I knew that going in. I happened to have a vacation or a kind of a work trip out there where it was going to be 100 degrees every day and high 80s, 90s every night. But one has to consider, could you live in that for a week, several weeks, several months, every year, every summer? And the answer, I don't know. But again, you might not be hauling rocks throughout the day, trying to clean a pool in the day, hauling wood from one place to another. So it helps to not need to do anything outside except for maybe just walk with an umbrella or something, or just use the outside to get from air conditioning house to air conditioning car to air conditioning movie theater and repeat the cycle. So it kind of just depends on what you need to do. Or you just go in that zombie state where you just no longer care. That's what happened to me. Next. People are nice. That's not surprising to me. I kind of knew people were pretty nice in Texas. Are they like way nicer than other states? I don't know. I think people in America are overall pretty nice. You got some jerks, but I didn't meet any jerks in Texas. I think they exist, but I just didn't meet any. Overall, I found the people were friendly and welcoming, so I had no problems with anybody, but that's kind of normal even here. Also about people, there's a lot of people that don't have accents. They don't have that Texas accent. I just was kind of shocked. Again, I didn't go out that much, but I would go to Walmart and places, Home Depot, and there's just a lot of people that don't have accents. I'm not saying most don't. I think most probably do. I was just surprised that it was like not almost everybody. I think it's the immigration from other states and all the changes or other countries. I don't know what it is, but I was actually kind of surprised that I didn't hear a lot more accents. Texas is a big state, like we discussed. It's got big ideas, big things, big concepts, big trucks. I even borrowed a big truck. That was fun to drive. Gas was probably 3 miles a gallon. And I'm not even kidding. I think it was 3 miles a gallon. But it's just big, and big houses. They got a lot of bricks, they put them together, and they made a house out of it. They made tons of houses out of it. It's cheap, so people like to build big. Oddly, streets are small. Now, not the main thoroughfare streets. Those are kind of big with like 2 lanes each way, or maybe 3. The grid system of streets works, but when you get into neighborhoods, oddly, the streets are very small, very tiny. I was like shocked. How do you fit the big trucks? Well, apparently you're not supposed to, in a lot of places, park on the road because of a truck. Big truck here, big truck on the other side. You know what other big truck cannot get through? A fire truck. So that causes some real problems. Yeah, you could have it where the fire truck cannot get to a home to save it from being burned down, or who knows, a neighborhood. So those laws make a lot of sense. So I could easily see it happening in places. And people did park their trucks on the side of the road, but I didn't see any place where, I mean, my truck was pretty big. If I couldn't get through, then a fire truck couldn't get through, and everywhere I went, I got through. But I could see it being a problem. It's just odd to see small roads in neighborhoods. Now, I can't say much about the tolerance of Texas for other things, but for as far as Christianity, very tolerant there. Freedom of religion seems pretty big there. Again, my sample set is small, But it's interesting to see billboards for churches or prayer groups or things like that, just way up there, things I've never saw in California, and I don't think I've ever seen in like the Seattle area of Washington. So a lot of freedom there. But again, I don't have the whole picture, just my limited experience. Pools are expensive. Let's go back to the pool, which you usually use to cool off, especially when it's 100 degrees out. Maybe the cold winter, you wouldn't be swimming as much or using the spa. But pools are great. They're also very expensive. It's like incredibly expensive. You got to run the filter like all day when the sun is beaten down, otherwise you're going to get algae like right away. I mean, algae is like waiting out right outside the window there, and as soon as you don't have that AC on all day, it's coming in. Your pool's going to be green in no time. So that's something to consider. They're very expensive to build. If you change your mind, they're very expensive to get rid of, and they're very expensive to maintain. It's a literal money pit. I've had issues with my pool out there ever since I first bought the house, and there's still issues that are, before I even sell it, that are not going to go away until I spend a lot more money. But again, when it's 100 degrees, it is nice to dip in a pool. Is it like $30,000 nice? Hard to say. I mean, when I went swimming in the heat, after a few minutes, I'm like, okay, I'm cooled off, and you're just kind of waiting around thinking, this is a very, very expensive way to take a cold bath when I could have just been in the house and taken a cold bath or a cold shower and saved a whole lot of money. So if you got a family and stuff like that, maybe it's worth it, and you use it a lot and you don't care about the expense, but it's very expensive to have, to maintain, and to clean. So they're not cheap. Is it worth it? Maybe, and maybe not. And that ties in, well, the heat ties in, the pool ties into utilities, which can get very expensive. The kilowatt per hour, I don't know, it seems to range from 11 to 15 cents. But if you get a 2-story, you probably got 2 AC units, one downstairs, one upstairs. And if you just run one, well, it's not going to do that much good unless you have things sealed off properly. But in general, you're going to run 2 units all day. Plus, you're going to run your filter all day. So 3 things using up tons of power, and your fridge is going to be probably going into overdrive to keep things cool. So summers are going to be expensive months. They have some cold winters, not like freezing, it's not like North Dakota, but you're going to have to be running that furnace to keep the house warm, or maybe even hot in the winter. So it's just not cheap for utilities. If you've got a 2-story home with a pool, you're talking, I don't know, my guess is like $700 to $1,000 a month for utilities. Unless you just like to stay in the heat, which I kind of did for most of the week out there. Thought, I'd rather just have the heat. But 95 degrees indoors all day, it gets to you after a while. It gets to you. And I'd like to say it's just those hot summers that if you can get through 3 or 4, or maybe 5 months of those heat, then you're going to be cool sailing all winter long. Nah, you're going to have the issues with the storms, the windstorms, the frequent tornadoes. I mean, remember, think of Kansas and Dorothy and all that kind of stuff. Well, Texas is not immune to it, even though it's not Kansas. There are winter storms that come by and will just, rip the roof off your house. How do I know? It happened in my house. So, yeah, that was luckily covered by insurance. So you pay a lot of money for insurance, but at least you get to use it once in a while after your deductible of $1,200. But yeah, so winter does not mean you just get to like take a break from worrying about the weather for the, future. It's just insane. I think falls are nice. Maybe a pleasant fall and spring. Yay! And a little bonus of the area I was in is that if you're near Dallas, Dallas is a nice big city. They don't call it the city, because I said to a neighbor, I'm going to go into the city. Like, what? We don't call it the city. What? How can you not call a big city the city? Because I guess there's a lot of big cities and they don't call it the city. I like to call it the city. If I were going into Seattle, I would say the city, or San Francisco, the city. It's the city. Anyway, that's getting sidetracked. They do, because they are a big city, they do have some cool theater that comes through. So I actually got to see a show, and it was like Broadway level performance there. So that was actually kind of neat. The show is the most boring thing I've ever, the music in the show was the most boring music I've ever listened to, but the rest of the show was great, and everyone performed just fine. So they get professional stuff that comes through. So there are, pros and cons. Overall, you just really have to consider the heat more than anything else. Otherwise, oh yeah, another bonus number 2, is that prices well, gas was low. Gas is low. Of course, your truck's going to get 3 miles a gallon. But yeah, food. Some of the food at Walmart was like really expensive. I was just kind of shocked to see that it's like no better than other places like California or the Bay Area, California, and Seattle. So that was actually kind of surprising to me. So I still had to buy food. I had to eat. Anyway, that's what I learned 9 days in Dallas. And I would like to go back. I would not really want to go back to my home. Probably be sold by the next time I get down there anyway. But I would like to go back and just have an enjoyable time of not dealing with the heat. We didn't even talk about the bugs. I'll throw them in. They're bad. They bite. But you don't feel them biting. You just feel the welts and the bumps and the blisters the next day. So, yeah, I just threw that in. Anyway, I would love to go back and actually spend time just visiting all the cool stuff. And maybe it won't be in August, though. Never go there in August. They should just close the state in August. All right, cheers.